Good evening, I'm David Common. Ian is away. Tonight, messages of hope, sacrifice, and courage on a Christmas day like no other.
I'm glad that my family's safe at home. I'm glad also that I'm here trying to help people.
From the front lines to everyday Canadians. People are finding new ways to celebrate old traditions and make sure social distancing doesn't mean socially distant.
A year that has necessarily kept people apart has in many ways brought us closer.
Also tonight, the FBI investigates a Christmas morning explosion in downtown Nashville. What we know about the bizarre warning that came just minutes before the blast.
A recording saying that a potential bomb would detonate within 15 minutes.
Hundreds of Quebecers out of their homes as waters rise. We take you there. And honoring his daughter by bringing comfort to sick kids.
It gives me a purpose now.
This is The National. An unusual and historic December 25th around the world today, but the quiet calm of Christmas morning, magnified by the pandemic's isolation, was shattered by a bomb blast in Nashville, Tennessee. The FBI has now taken over the investigation into the massive explosion, being treated as a deliberate act. Someone parked an RV in the city's downtown early this morning, and shortly after, it exploded, taking much of a city block with it. Derek Stoffel brings us to the moment of detonation.
The explosion rocked downtown Nashville, shattering the quiet of Christmas morning. From the air, the scale of the destruction was clear. On the ground, streets looked more like a war zone. All this began around 6 in the morning when police were called to the area to investigate gunshots.
As officers responded, they encountered an RV that had a recording saying that a potential bomb would detonate within 15 minutes.
Witnesses say the recording warned to evacuate now. A bomb is in this vehicle and will explode. Then a voice started a 15-minute countdown. Officers scrambled to get people out of their homes, but the device went off just as the police bomb squad was heading to the area. The neighborhood is home to country music venues and restaurants. Officials say it's fortunate the bomb went off so early when the area was empty, almost.
There was actually a man walking his dog on 2nd Avenue that an officer stopped and directed in another way just before the RV exploded. The explosion knocked one of our officers to the ground.
No one was killed, but 3 people suffered minor injuries. Police are now investigating the possibility that human remains were found near the explosion site. 911 emergency service was disrupted following the blast. Cell phone providers also reported service outages when their facilities were damaged by the explosion. The FBI is leading the investigation in what officials call an intentional act.
We're putting everything we have into finding who was responsible for what's happened here today.
Police brought in dogs to look for other explosives, but soon gave the all clear. Though their investigation is expected to keep the neighborhood largely shut down into the weekend. Derek Stoffel, CBC News, Washington.
Now to Canada and our own various shutdowns. Christmas here has rarely been so muted. COVID-19 kept many families apart. There wasn't much of a holiday bustle, and choirs didn't gather for carols. Still, much was given. Tonight, you'll hear what it's like to pull a shift in the ER on Christmas. Many of those stalwart frontline workers got no day off today. We'll show you how people are coping with the isolation and Christmas traditions around the world turned upside down by those necessary precautions. But let's start here at home. Today, nearly all of Quebec began an 18-day lockdown. Tomorrow, province-wide restrictions take effect in Ontario, and across Canada, there's a chorus of official voices telling us to stay home. Stara Levitt shows us what that did to the celebrations.
Snow on Christmas morning was a bonus for 12-year-old Suhani Pandya and her sister Serena. A comforting seasonal touch in a year so far from normal.
I would have my grandparents come over and most of them would stay the night. And to me, it's just kind of get together with them. which has actually been hard now because we can't see any of them.
Video calls are the saving grace, if a bit complicated.
Once I was actually trying to contact my grandparents, and his video was turned off, and he had no clue how to turn it on.
Suhani is also missing her dad.
I've been here since 8 o'clock this morning.
A surgeon and physician, he's at work at Brampton Civic Hospital's ICU.
Brampton Civic is at the epicenter, and we've had many COVID patients. It has been very busy the last many weeks.
Quebec's circuit breaker lockdown started today, but Christmas services went on. In Montreal, the Christmas service at Christ Church Cathedral took weeks of planning from Oxford, England. Music director Jonathan White has been there for months and finds the distance hard.
That magic of just turning around to someone next to you and saying Happy Christmas for the first time that we haven't had this year. We're very lucky that our congregation has held together throughout all this.
Was Santa good to you?
Greg and Celia Phelps spent much of today on video calls with their kids and grandkids.
Look at that! Lego!
Despite the calls, it's been a hard Christmas.
We woke up this morning and kind of looked at each other and said, Merry Christmas. This is it. It's lonely. Because even though you're watching your family, it's not the same as being with them.
The pervasiveness of the disappointment is quite profound. It's really affecting everyone.
Until vaccines roll out, people can't get very close. But this Christmas proved we can still reach out across the distance. Sarah Levitt, CBC News, Toronto.
COVID-19's effect on the holiday is hardly limited to Canada. All over the world, people are experiencing a strange and sometimes lonelier Christmas. But while the pandemic can keep people apart, it can't take away their spirit. Australia's famous Bondi Beach was all but empty, which must have felt like a Christmas miracle for the few at the normally crowded hotspot. Other popular Christmas destinations were also quiet, from Moscow's Red Square to Rome's St. Peter's Square, normally teeming with people eager to hear the Pope's Christmas message. This year, deserted. Italy and other European countries are setting up for the arrival of vaccines in the coming days. But in South Africa, where a new highly transmissible COVID variant has taken root, those doses won't arrive until sometime in the first half of 2021. Less than ideal for a country closing in on 1 million reported infections. It was the fair distribution of those crucial vaccines that Pope Francis focused on in his annual Christmas message, urging rich countries not to hoard them.
In questo momento storico,
the Pope saying it is important for us to acknowledge one another as brothers and sisters. He then implored heads of state, corporate CEOs, and international organizations to find a way to deliver vaccines for all, especially the needy. In her 68 years on the throne, the Queen has delivered her Christmas message through wars, labor strife, family scandals, and Beatlemania. But today's was the first during a pandemic. She used the occasion to send a message of hope. And as Farah Morali explains, that's not all.
For many of you to see me in your homes on Christmas Day.
From her home to yours. 6 decades later, the Queen's message endures. It simply isn't Christmas without it.
Every year, we herald the coming of Christmas by turning on the lights. And light does more than create a festive mood. Light brings hope.
This year's message, in the midst of history, life must go on.
I think the theme is that things will get back to normal, that we will mourn the dead, we will remember and learn from the difficulties of this year.
It has been an extraordinarily difficult year for people across the UK with the pandemic, uncertainty around Brexit, and now lockdown restrictions that are keeping people apart at Christmas, including the royal family.
For the first time in decades, the royal family isn't spending Christmas together at Sandringham. And they were notion apart from Prince Harry and Meghan, who left behind their royal duties this year. It's been a year of change and adaptation.
It is difficult when people are used to being so close to each other.
Her Majesty even learned how to Zoom, and in April gave a rare speech to comfort a country stricken by COVID, tones of which were echoed today.
People have risen magnificently to the challenges of the year, and I'm so proud and moved by this quiet, indomitable spirit.
They are words that carry weight.
The Queen's positive outlook and enthusiasm really does have a profound impact on people's mindset, and that's definitely something I'll take from this year's speech.
In a poignant finale, a carol sung by frontline health workers, a tribute to those who helped shine a light on all that was dark this year. Farah Morali, CBC News, London.
We want to show you a bit more of the Queen's Christmas message, including the way she described the selfless sacrifice of frontline workers.
In November, we commemorated another hero, though nobody knows his name. The tomb of the unknown warrior isn't a large memorial, but everyone entering Westminster Abbey has to walk around his resting place, honoring this unnamed combatant of the First World War, a symbol of selfless duty and ultimate sacrifice. The unknown warrior was not exceptional. That's the point. He represents millions like him who throughout our history have put the lives of others above their own, and will be doing so today.
In the fight against COVID-19, many have been called into service. It's been a year of sacrifice for frontline medical workers. Rafi Boudjikanian spoke to 3 ER doctors who worked this Christmas Day. They have a message for everyone.
You have your usual illnesses that come on, and it's bad timing, and it's really sad when it's on Christmas.
For emergency physician Josh Fanayan, it's a difficult end to a difficult year.
One thing that sticks out the most is I remember having a patient a few months ago who was clearly dying. They couldn't be surrounded by their loved ones as they normally would be. The patient's family had to wear gloves and gowns. They couldn't hug or kiss the patient.
Elsewhere in the country, similar sentiments as doctors have adjusted to the unusual.
It's amazing how routine it all feels, wearing all our strange PPE, seeing people who are, suddenly so short of breath from an infection that didn't even exist a year ago.
But during this holiday season, it's not just patients bearing the weight of COVID-19.
The feeling in the hospital is usually fairly lighthearted and fun, and we get to have a bit of fun, I guess, between the patients that we see. I think the difference this year is really the amount of illness.
As of last week, more than 27,000 people had been hospitalized due to COVID-19 this year, more than 5,000 admitted to intensive care, prompting this plea from the doctors we spoke to, no matter where in the country they work.
Try and, really stay within your households this Christmas. Really try not to mix with other individuals, because, if you keep going around and keep leaving your home and visiting other homes, that's how this disease spreads.
I know it's been a hard year, but hopefully 2021 will be a bit brighter for us.
It's like being in a marathon. Sometimes the last couple miles in marathon running are the hardest.
A last-ditch effort to curb the pandemic as vaccines roll out across Canada. Rafi Boudjikanian, CBC News, Edmonton.
A large explosion rocked southern Ontario this morning.
What is that?
Thick, dark smoke filled the sky over Hamilton's East End after a blast at one of the city's steel plants. No one was injured, but witnesses describe hearing a series of loud bangs followed by a sulfur-like smell in the air. Officials believe the incident doesn't pose a threat to the public. In Quebec, hundreds of people are out of their homes tonight as heavy rains and melting snow raise the risk of flooding in parts of the province.
C'est du jamais vu pour moi là, en 8 ans de mairie là, de voir une recrudescence d'eau si rapide.
200 people have been forced from their homes near Sainte-Brigitte de Laval, with more evacuations in Quebec City tonight. Multiple rivers in the area have been swollen by the rain, and parts of the region are still under a rainfall warning. Let's go now to Cassandra Nadeau-Lamarche in the Beauport neighborhood of Quebec City, where several homes were evacuated late tonight. Cassandra, you've been in that evacuation zone all day today. What are you seeing now this evening?
So there's still a lot of rivers that are on high alert right now because there's been a lot of rain since yesterday, and also with the high temperature, snow melting, a lot of water is going through these rivers, and it's made evacuation necessary for a few areas. Here in Beauport, we're talking about 20 houses that have been flooded and people have been evacuated tonight. Elsewhere, there have been people that have been evacuated for their safety. We're talking about a few hundreds. The good news right now is that the rain has stopped, so that means it may get better in the next few hours or tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, where do people go when they can't be at home in these weird COVID times?
So it's definitely different right now because of the measures that are in place here in Quebec. People are not technically allowed to go to a friend's house or family's house. So the Red Cross has helped a lot of people, and they have set people up in hotel rooms to make sure they're dry and safe tonight.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much, Cassandra.
You're welcome.
That is Cassandra Nadeau-Lamarche in Quebec City tonight. Warm winters are also having an impact on lakes across the Northern Hemisphere.
We could have over 5,000 lakes that we've predicted could lose ice cover permanently by the end of this century.
Up next, the consequences of a warmer future. Plus, a Canadian first.
We wouldn't even know this resource existed if it weren't for the oil and gas industry.
How a new type of geothermal power plant could change the energy game. And later, a cross-country Christmas moment.
We could take the unique opportunity of having people stuck at home across the country and bring everyone together with a song.
We're back in 2. A usually wet and balmy Christmas turned white for many in British Columbia's south coast after a blanketing of snow earlier this week. The prairies saw their usual dumping of winter weather, with some in Saskatchewan taking advantage and embarking on a memorable Christmas Day stroll. Parts of southern Ontario also saw a white Christmas thanks to a last-minute winter storm. But things quickly changed the further east you went. Montreal saw its warmest Christmas day on record, hitting a little over 13 degrees this afternoon. Atlantic Canada saw a full 180 this holiday season. Last December, much of the region was buried in snow. Today, well, tobogganing got a little more challenging. The trusty snowblower was traded in for the rare winter lawnmower. And the temperature in Halifax, a toasty 14 degrees. A green Christmas may seem more novelty than nuisance, but warmer winters are affecting our lakes. Decades of data show lakes that typically freeze over every winter are not now. On the surface, that will mess with your game of shinny, but underwater, it's wreaking havoc on ecosystems. Deshauna Reed explains.
Alex Mills is keeping a watchful eye. He's been collecting lake ice observations on Lake Simcoe since the 80s, adding to a long data record taken by locals for almost 170 years.
The overall trend is pretty clear, and that is since about 1850, the lake now freezes up about 2 weeks later than it used to, and it thaws about 1 week earlier than it used to.
The records from Lake Simcoe were included in a recent global study. York University researchers looked at nearly 80 years of ice data from 122 lakes across the entire northern hemisphere. They found ice-free years have become more than 3 times more frequent since the late 70s.
So there's a shorter season of ice duration, but in some lakes we're seeing that they're crossing that tipping point to becoming ice-free.
Driving the trend is warmer winters, and the impact is wide-reaching. Delays opening winter ice roads in northern communities, shortened seasons for ice fishing and other outdoor activities. Ice-free lakes also have ecological impacts, affecting water quality, the spawning times of fish, and increased risks of toxic algal blooms.
We could have over 5,000 lakes that we've predicted could lose ice cover permanently by the end of this century.
Claude Duguay has been tracking lake changes using satellite imagery. He found that in northwestern Alaska, during its warmest winter on record 2 years ago, permafrost thaw caused 192 lakes to drain.
Climate models are currently projecting temperature increases and snowfall increases in the same order of magnitudes as those that we observed. it's a glimpse at what could be happening in the future.
Most lakes in Canada, including Lake Simcoe, still freeze every year, but that could change.
There may very well be in my lifetime a year where it doesn't freeze.
Another reason, some say, for greater action to fight climate change. Tashana Reid, CBC News, Toronto.
Still ahead, a green resource fix found deep below the ground. We visit a Canadian geothermal power plant to understand how it could change the energy industry. Welcome back. A little less than a year ago, COVID-19 became the focus of the world. But as 2020 comes to an end, there is another crisis many scientists are still fighting: climate change. And on that front, a small Saskatoon-based company is making global headlines by bringing a new energy source to Canada. As our colleagues at Radio-Canada's Découverte found out, oil workers are the ones leading this potentially landmark move. Here's science reporter Toby Lebel.
These workers are from the oil industry. They're using the same tools, the same science.
We wouldn't even know this resource existed if it weren't for the oil and gas industry.
But here, what they're looking for, more than 3.5 kilometers below, is water. Water so hot, you can use it to generate electricity.
All right, that's amazing. That's very cool.
Thanks to this project, named DEEP, Canada might soon have its very first geothermal power plant.
We're going to be producing power very quickly here.
This is southeast Saskatchewan. Geologist Kirsten Marcia grew up here, surrounded by crops and oil wells. And it's here she wants to spark a green revolution in the energy field.
I've been developing resources as an exploration geologist my entire career. And we looked at geothermal as a unique resource where, as long as the center of the Earth is hot, we've got an inexhaustible, clean baseload power supply. Once geothermal is installed, it runs 24/7.
Yet, in this part of the country, there are no volcanoes. The resource is hidden deep underground, in rocks that are 500 million years old. It's very hot, salty water, 125 degrees Celsius. To give us a better look, the team hired a drone pilot equipped with a rather special camera.
You see, holy smokes. Look at the temperature difference between that tank and that tank.
Thanks to its infrared vision, we can see the heat directly, even though it was a really hot day. The air was 38 degrees, and the ground was even hotter. Workers, by contrast, looked cold. You can clearly see the water pumped from one of the wells and stored in tanks.
That looks hot.
92.9 we're reading right now on the outside of that tank.
For me, this is amazing to actually see it. I mean, when you look at the tanks, I mean, you know there's hot water in there, but to actually see it visualized like this is pretty cool for us and our team.
Geothermal in itself is not new. But in Canada, it's never been used before to generate electricity. And for that, you need a lot of this hot water.
Geothermal uses massive volumes of fluid. So that tank farm back there, on a daily basis, we're going to fill and inject about 1 an hour of those tank farms. So this is a huge water moving process.
To pump that much water, Kirsten Marcia also needed very specific rocks to allow the fluid to move around. Her treasure hunt began here. These archives contain core samples of everything that's been drilled in Saskatchewan, whether it's to find oil, diamonds, gold, uranium, or potash. But what she was after were actually holes.
So this is a sandstone that has really great porosity, and that porosity is connected so that the fluid can move through the rock.
The other main ingredient is the temperature. And she found it in public data somewhat by chance.
So when you drill a well, you do what's called geophysical logging, and of course temperature is one of the readings that's also taken. Interesting, it's actually usually just used for calibration, but in our case, you know, temperature was the key piece and what we were looking for.
Both temperature and porosity pointed to rock formations deep below her home region along the US border.
This is a sweet spot, so within the stack of pancakes, that is the sedimentary units that host all of these resources, there is a particular sweet spot that is more permeable than the rest, and it's going to flow better for us.
That explains the design of the first power plant. The next drilling goes down 3.5 kilometers, and once in the sweet spot, the well becomes horizontal for another 2 kilometers. A twin well will go in the other direction. And further north, 2 more pair of wells will join them.
So the hot water comes out of the ground, we pump it, we run it through a heat exchanger. So we harvest the heat out of that brine, and that's where we're done with it. So now we've got the heat, and then we introduce it to a working fluid. In our case, probably butane. That butane goes from the liquid phase to the vapor phase, and that's what turns the turbine. It's actually called binary cycle because you've got a loop of this refrigerant running, and then you've got a loop of your hot brine, coming up hot, going back cold for reheating.
The water, now at 65 degrees, is re-injected between the pumping wells. As it percolates through the rocks, it picks up heat little by little. The question is how much distance you need between the different wells. That was precisely the focus of the test carried out during our visit. For weeks, the team pumped water, added a chemical tracer, and re-injected it 750 meters further. That way, one can measure how long it takes for the water to move through the rock before it's picked up again. The first plant will generate 20 megawatts of electricity, enough to power 20,000 homes. The team is already scouting locations for a second plant that will produce another 20 megawatts. This well goes to a record depth, more than 3.7 kilometers. To test it, a pressurized gas is injected at the very bottom. After a few hours of waiting, the gas rises back and the water starts flowing. The key information, of course, is the temperature. But a chemist also analyzes its composition, looking especially for salts that could accumulate in tanks or pipes. They are also checking for bacteria, which could proliferate and clog the pipes or cause them to rust.
We don't want to get a surprise. I mean, the resource could vary a little bit better, a little bit worse, but the quicker that we understand the nature of it, the better. Right, well, we expect that this to be very, very similar to the other wells. One of the things that we've learned about this resource is that it's very, very consistent, very predictable. But because this is a fairly big step out, this is really going to test that theory that this is a very consistent resource. We want to take a big step out to see if there's any subtle changes.
Geothermal power plants never use all the energy contained in the water. Elsewhere in the world, the water is still warm enough to heat swimming pools, fish farms, greenhouses, or even sidewalks during the winter. Kirsten Marcia believes geothermal can help her region diversify its economy and go green without turning its back on the oil workers.
We've got this unique situation where we can draw upon all of the world-class expertise, all of the world-class technology to develop this resource. If you looked across Canada, there wouldn't be a better location that's already pre-set up to drill these, really amazing wells. It's perfect. And we can then, use the oil field workers and redeploy their skills for the first time ever on a renewable energy project.
That is Radio-Canada's Toby Labelle, the science reporter at Découverte. When we come back, sending a message about wildlife conservation through photography, how a Canadian is capturing more than just those pictures. Welcome back. As we bid a less than fond farewell to 2020, we're revisiting some of our favorite moments from the past year. And tonight, Andrew's conversation with a passionate Canadian wildlife photographer committed to showing us humanity's impact on ocean wildlife.
This is a place human eyes don't often see, but humanity's impact here, undeniable. It is often hidden, out of sight, but not to everyone. Shane Gross spends much of his time in a place where it's easy to feel unwelcome, but he thinks of it as home and one he shares.
I try to tell long-form stories about the ocean. Sometimes it's a single frame, sometimes it's 10 or 15 pictures that try to tell a narrative story. We shouldn't have to defend why a certain species or animal deserves the right to exist on the planet. And by telling their story, by getting them out there, maybe some more people will care.
Humility. It is Shane's guide, but he's driven by an urge to protect. So consider what happens when someone so accustomed to photographing life comes to photograph death.
You know, I've spent a lot of time in the water with live turtles, and so it was depressing. There's a green turtle tangled in fishing line. To see the life in the eyes of a turtle, and then to see one where it's gone, I mean, its eyes had actually been eaten out by scavengers. That dead look, it was haunting, you know, to know that that animal was killed for no real reason. It was a complete waste. It would have suffered in its final moments. Turtles need to come up to the surface to breathe air. And so it would have been entangled in the line and tried to make it up to the surface to breathe, and it couldn't, and the turtle drowned, which must have been a horrible way to go as well. So it was emotional.
Does it make you angry?
Of course. I'm angry all the time. I'm angry when I look at a shoreline and I see plastic bottles and plastic bags, and anger in its raw form doesn't accomplish much. I try to use it as a motivation to try to inspire change.
It's a photo that still haunts Shane, a powerful image of humanity's impact on our oceans, and one that's caught the world's attention. It won an International Photography Award. But Shane knows convincing people to take conservation seriously isn't going to happen by accident. It takes meticulous planning. When Shane prepares for a shoot, he's like a watchmaker. Every piece carefully cleaned, checked, and rechecked, no detail too small. Today, Shane's packing for a shoot at a secret location on a nearby island, and he's taking me with him.
All right, so Shane, we're on Eleuthera Island in the Bahamas, but where specifically are we?
Well, we're in South Eleuthera. That's about as specific as I'd like to get.
Why is that?
Well, if a spot gets too well known, it can scare the wildlife. It could even bring poachers in to try to take the animals out. So we want to be very careful about giving away specific locations where wildlife is abundant.
So how many people know about the spot that we're about to head to?
Maybe a few researchers, a few local fishermen. That's about it.
And it's just that way?
Yeah, straight up the beach here. We got a little bit of a trek. As you can see, it's a little bit choppy, so yeah. It'll be a fun splashy trek.
For this trip, Shane packs light. The shot he wants, clear as day in his head. It's a secluded spot where baby lemon sharks gather, away from predators and, importantly, from people.
The first time I came here, photographically, was a disaster. The sharks, I thought they would just come right into the camera and be aggressive like people think sharks are, and they would not come in anywhere close enough to the camera.
Today, we hope to have better luck.
There's one right there.
Oh yeah.
Swimming away pretty quick. When the sharks first see us, they're pretty shy. So that's why we're seeing them come in within maybe a couple meters, and then they're going off to think or do whatever they do, and then hopefully they come back.
How long could you spend out here waiting for the perfect shot?
Oh, I have spent days. Two of my favorite pictures that I've ever taken were right here. One is, it was sunset, and I tilted my camera facing straight up to the surface. A big storm came over, and the setting sun lit up the clouds beautifully right behind a lemon shark that swam directly over top of my camera. At the time, I didn't have a remote trigger, so I used my toe to actually snap the picture.
No kidding.
But I got it, and yeah, I just love it. The moments you live for, you know?
What are some of the other places like this around the area?
Well, we're pretty lucky that we have some really beautiful places. And one place that I've spent a lot of time because it's just stunning, it's called the Sapphire Blue Hole. And it's some of the clearest water you can imagine, and some really unique wildlife lives in there. But now that's changed.
So this is Sapphire Blue Hole.
This is Sapphire Blue Hole.
There is a whole ecosystem of life in there.
Yeah, so there's a couple of key species that live in here that can't live in other ecosystems where there would be large predators. So this is a closed ecosystem, which makes it quite unique and really important for those two species, the red cave shrimp and the Bahamas cave fish, which is also known as the lucifuga.
And how delicate is it to keep that balance? I mean, where are they getting their food from?
Well, I think a lot of what they depend on is organic matter that falls in to the blue hole from the surrounding trees. There's insects and the leaves themselves. I've seen the shrimp literally eating the leaves, and praying mantises and other insects that fall in.
And so this place today looks different than from the last time you were here.
Yeah, so just very recently, within the last couple of weeks, somebody had come and cut the trees around the perimeter down and put up this fence and...
This fence wasn't here before?
No. Little as 2 weeks ago, this fence wasn't here.
And when you talk about trees being, like that's what I'm seeing there, the
stumps? I'm stepping on one right now. There's tree stumps going 360 degrees around the blue hole. I don't know how much thought, if any, was given into what impact that's going to have on the animals. And the increase in tourist traffic could bring in unwanted chemicals like sunscreens, insect repellents, those kinds of things, which may also have a negative effect on it.
The reason Shane brought me here wasn't just to show me how the area has changed, but also to show me a photograph he took not all that long ago that he can never take again.
And the picture I was looking for was one that showed that relationship between the fish and its environment. So the fish in the foreground and in the background was showing the opening of the blue hole with those trees overhanging the blue hole. But it's extremely fragile. You can see how small it is. Any small change could be catastrophic for the animals that live in there. There are a lot of still untouched places in the Bahamas compared to some other places in the world. But there are definitely places that have been, in my opinion, destroyed. The reason why people go to these places in the first place is for their natural beauty. And to me, when you start to mess with that, it kind of defeats its own purpose.
Shane's biggest fear? That we are recklessly, irrevocably erasing fish like the lucifuga from existence. It's only survived all these years because its caves are undisturbed. It's incredibly rare.
You know, when I do hear about people making plans to turn a beautiful natural area into a marina, I get angry. And, you know, we shouldn't have to, defend a species' right to survive on our planet. They should have that right inherently. I never understood that.
It's lonely work, but with each photograph he takes, Shane is driven to make a difference.
I just hope that it connects with people on an emotional level. We are constantly inundated with statistics and facts, and it doesn't seem to lead to any kind of change, but an emotional connection can lead to change.
Shane's recent prize, proof that people care, but the mission, that never ends.
Beautiful piece. Coming up next, a special gift for tough times. How a Saskatchewan charity is responding to the pandemic and helping kids when they need it most. Welcome back. There were probably a lot of teddy bears under Christmas trees this morning, but in Saskatchewan, there's a special kind. For years, a charity has made them available to children in need. And as Bonnie Allen explains, the pandemic has become their moment to shine.
7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14.
For Kinley Hildebrandt, each teddy bear is a badge of honor earned each time she's been in the hospital, and that's been a lot. The 7-year-old was born with a pediatric liver disease.
They keep me happy in the hospital.
For 12 years, a Saskatchewan charity called Teddy Bears Anonymous has gifted these furry friends to sick or scared children around the province. 160,000 so far.
She would get one of these teddy bears and it would maybe make her not feel so scared. A lot of times she's gone into surgery and they've actually given her one of these and she's been able to bring it into the operating room with her.
The pandemic has only amplified the demand. There are tighter restrictions on taking personal items into some health facilities, but frontline workers can hand out these custom-made sanitized bears.
Right now we're in the right place, the right time.
Luke Lawrence started Teddy Bears Anonymous to honor his daughter, Erin, who passed away from stomach cancer in 2007.
It gives me a purpose now to see children being gifted with these teddy bears. My daughter would love that.
Paramedic Brett Penny recently used one of the bears to comfort a young girl with a head injury.
A little girl who was just terrified of this big stranger in her house, and I was able to give her the bear and she just lit up and made the day a lot easier for myself and her.
Regina police also carry the plush toys in their patrol cars and hand them out to children caught up in violence or chaos.
Even in the dire straits of a tragic situation, it will bring a smile or a small bit of solace to the face and the hearts of those involved, and our officers are no different.
Public health restrictions have hindered fundraising for Teddy Bears Anonymous, but Candace Hildebrandt helps collect donations. She's forever grateful.
I feel like she's not alone going in there, you know, like she's comforted, so I'm a little bit more comforted.
As for Kinley, she had a liver transplant last year and is spending a lot less time in hospital. Bonnie Allen, CBC News, Regina.
After the break, coming together for a very Canadian Christmas moment. The story behind a new CanCon holiday original. That's next. Suresh Singaratnam, a composer, wanted to write a new Christmas song that celebrates Canada, the land, and of course, the people. This year, 170 musicians and singers came together and helped it come alive. A Canadian Christmas is our moment.
You know how we have Canada Day in July, right, every year? And it kind of brings everyone together. I thought it would be cool to turn Christmas and all our other winter celebrations into something like that. I had kind of an inkling that this might be possible finally this year to do a cross-country recording because I wouldn't have to travel. We could take the unique opportunity of having people stuck at home across the country and bring everyone together with a song.
Good job, Suresh. Big logistical effort to get all of those people. The CBC's Adrienne Harewood, one of those singers there. That is the National for December 25th. I'm David Common.